We've all experienced anger at some point. It's a very natural human reaction to feeling hurt, misunderstood, or treated unfairly. Anger can flare up in seconds, causing the heart to race, the voice to raise, and thoughts to become more extreme. There's nothing wrong with having those feelings. The important thing is how we confront and manage them. The difference between a mature person and an impulsive person isn't about who gets angry less. It's about their ability to control themselves when emotions run high. An impulsive person lets anger guide their words and actions. They react immediately, sometimes without thinking about the consequences. Meanwhile, a mature person understands that every reaction has a price. They choose to pause for a few seconds, take a deep breath, and consider the situation before speaking. Anger may bring intense feelings in the moment, but its consequences often last. An uncontrolled remark can hurt loved ones. A thoughtless action can affect one's career. Many relationships break down not because of major issues, but because of small, uncontrolled emotional outbursts. Controlling anger doesn't mean suppressing all emotions. It's not about pretending to be calm while seething inside. It's about recognizing when you're angry and proactively choosing how to react appropriately. When you're aware enough to recognize anger arising, you have a chance to adjust before things go too far. In life and work, composure is a form of quiet strength. Those who remain calm in stressful situations tend to make wiser decisions. They don't let fleeting emotions cloud their long-term goals. They understand that the greatest victory isn't winning an argument, but maintaining respect and trust. In this video, we'll revisit the power of composure and why controlling anger is a true sign of strength. You'll see that strength isn't about projecting power through volume or attitude, but about the ability to master yourself in the most challenging moments. Watch until the end and share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone learn how to stay calmer in a critical moment. Anger is a natural bodily reaction. When hurt or perceived as a threat, humans react almost immediately to protect themselves. This is neither evil nor abnormal. It is part of a survival mechanism that has existed for a long time in the process of evolution. Anger, to a certain extent, helps us identify boundaries and protect our self-worth. When someone insults us, when our rights are violated, or when we feel disrespected, our bodies trigger a stress response. Our heart rate increases, muscles tense, and breathing becomes more rapid. The brain sends signals that there is danger and immediate action is needed. This response helped our ancestors cope with danger in harsh environments. In modern times, the threat is no longer wild animals or natural disasters, but often communication conflicts, work pressure, or relationship disagreements. Because anger is a natural reaction, it cannot be completely eliminated. What we can do is understand its nature. When we understand that anger is just a signal, we become less fearful and less self-blaming. Many people, after losing their temper, often torment themselves, believing they are weak or lack self-control. In reality, the problem isn't the anger itself, but how we process that emotion. Anger often masks a deeper emotion. Sometimes it's hurt. Sometimes it's a feeling of abandonment, disrespect, or underestimation. When we only see the surface as anger, we're likely to react strongly. But if we calmly observe, we can recognize that behind the anger lies a need to be respected, heard, or acknowledged. Understanding this need allows us to communicate more constructively. For example, when a colleague criticizes you in front of others, you might feel your honor is threatened. Your immediate reaction might be to retaliate or show your displeasure. But if you stop and ask yourself what you're truly feeling, you might realize you're hurt by a feeling of disrespect. Instead of reacting aggressively, you could choose to discuss the issue privately to clarify things. The outcome is often far more positive. Anger is also related to how we interpret events. Two people can experience the same situation, but react completely differently. One sees it as a personal attack, the other is simply a differing opinion. The difference lies in their perspective. When we interpret things negatively, anger easily flares up. When we allow ourselves to see things from multiple perspectives, the intensity of the emotion decreases. Another factor influencing anger is physical and mental state. When sleep-deprived, experiencing prolonged stress, or under immense pressure, our tolerance threshold is lower. Even small things can trigger a strong reaction. Therefore, taking care of one's health not only keeps the body healthy, but also helps stabilize emotions. It's important to distinguish between emotion and behavior. You can be angry, but you don't have to act on that anger. It's a small gap between emotion and reaction is where true character is revealed. When you feel anger rising, you can choose to take deep breaths, remain silent for a few minutes, or leave the situation to calm down. These seemingly simple actions can prevent major consequences. Some people believe that suppressing anger is a sign of weakness. They believe that expressing it immediately is the only way to be straightforward. However, control doesn't mean suppression. Suppression is forcing yourself not to feel anything, while control is recognizing your emotions and choosing appropriate ways to express them. You can still express your dissatisfaction, but with a respectful tone and language. Within families, many lasting wounds stem from instances of uncontrolled anger. A single angry remark can be deeply ingrained in someone else's memory. Children are particularly sensitive to adult emotions. When they frequently witness outbursts of anger, they may develop feelings of insecurity. Conversely, when adults demonstrate calmness and resolve conflicts peacefully, it provides valuable lessons in emotional management. In the workplace, those who remain calm are often more highly valued. Not because they never get angry, but because they don't let emotions control their decisions. When faced with a crisis, composure helps them analyze the situation clearly and come up with reasonable solutions. Anger might create a strong, immediate impact, but calmness builds lasting trust. Understanding that anger is a natural reaction helps us reduce self-blame. But a deeper understanding of its causes and effects helps us grow. Each time anger arises, it's an opportunity to observe ourselves. We can ask ourselves what is being hurt, what values feel threatened, what needs remain unmet. By answering these questions, we not only control our anger but also gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. Life is full of unpleasant situations. No one can completely avoid conflict or hurt, but we can choose how we react. There's always a small space between the stimulus and the reaction. Within that space lies the freedom of choice. When we cultivate the ability to pause, observe, and think before acting, we are building true character. Anger isn't the enemy. It's a signal that something important to us is being affected. But if we let that signal control all our behavior, we can cause unintended consequences. By understanding the mechanism and learning how to manage it, we transform anger from an impulsive reaction into a useful source of information. And when we do that, we not only protect ourselves, but also valuable relationships and opportunities in life. But immediate reactions aren't always right. In moments of heightened emotion, people often believe what they're thinking and feeling is absolutely correct. Anger makes us certain we've been offended. Fear makes us believe danger is imminent. Disappointment makes us think all our efforts are in vain. However, strong emotions don't equate to absolute truth. Many wrong decisions have been made in just a few minutes of losing control. When an immediate reaction occurs, the brain operates on a survival mechanism. The part responsible for processing emotions is strongly activated, while the part responsible for analysis and logical reasoning is temporarily suppressed. This helps us react quickly in emergency situations. But in the modern social environment, reacting too quickly can sometimes do more harm than good. Think of an argument. When you hear something hurtful, your first reaction might be to immediately retaliate with even sharper words. In that moment, you feel you're defending yourself. But just a few minutes later, when the emotions subside, you might realize you said something you shouldn't have. Words cannot be taken back. The hurt has been done. The same applies at work. An email that feels critical can lead to a harsh response. A hasty decision made under pressure can affect the entire team. In retrospect, we realize that if we had taken a few more minutes to think, the way things were handled could have been different. Emotional haste often leads us to misjudge the seriousness of the situation. Immediate reactions are often based on assumptions. We assume the other person intentionally tried to hurt us. We assume this failure proves our incompetence. We assume this opportunity will never come again, so we must make a decision immediately. These assumptions may be true, but they can also be completely false. Without verification, we are more likely to make inaccurate choices. Many major life decisions are made in extreme emotional states. Some people quit their jobs immediately after a conflict without considering long-term plans. Others end a relationship because of an unresolved misunderstanding. Some invest hastily for fear of missing out on opportunities. Later, looking back, they realize that those few moments of losing control shaped years of their lives. This doesn't mean we have to postpone every decision. There are situations that require a quick response, but most problems in life don't demand immediate action. We often put pressure on ourselves to respond immediately, to act immediately. In reality, sometimes pausing, even for just a few minutes, is enough to completely change the outcome. That small pause has great power. When emotions run high, simply taking a few deep breaths, walking a short distance, or remaining silent before responding gives the brain time to shift from reflexive mode to thinking mode. Then you can ask yourself other questions. Is this really as serious as I think? Am I misunderstanding the other person? What are the long-term consequences of this reaction? A crucial skill for adults is the ability to create distance between emotion and action. Emotions can come quickly, but action is a choice. When we recognize this, we are no longer victims of emotion. We become the controllers. Within families, moments of losing control can leave lasting wounds. A harsh reprimand in anger can be etched into a child's memory. An impulsive act can shatter trust. After calming down, regret may follow, but making amends sometimes takes a long time. If we had chosen to pause for a few seconds from the start, the situation might have been different. In the workplace, those who remain calm are often valued more highly than those who react impulsively. Calmness demonstrates the ability to handle pressure and strategic thinking. A good leader isn't someone who never gets angry, but someone who doesn't let anger dictate their actions. They understand that a hasty decision can impact the entire organization. Impulsive reactions also make us vulnerable to manipulation. When someone knows how to stir up our emotions, they can make us act in ways that benefit them. If we can't control our reactions, we easily fall into their trap. Conversely, when we remain calm, we are able to observe the bigger picture and not be swept away. Developing self-control isn't something that happens overnight. It requires constant self-awareness. Every time a strong emotion arises, it's an opportunity to practice. Initially, we might react too quickly, but gradually, we'll recognize the signals sooner. We'll know when our heart is racing, when our voice is about to rise. This early recognition allows us to intervene in time. Life always presents moments that test our patience. No one is perfect at controlling their emotions. But every time we choose not to let a few minutes of losing control shape our future, we are protecting ourselves. Calmness doesn't weaken us. On the contrary, it gives us lasting strength. Impulsive reactions may provide short-term satisfaction, but carefully considered decisions produce lasting results. Understanding this teaches us to respect pauses. And within those pauses, we find the clarity necessary to avoid mistakes made due to a few moments of losing self-control. The story of Abraham Lincoln is often cited as a profound lesson in composure and emotional control. He was one of the most famous presidents in American history, leading the country through a period of intense division and tension during the Civil War. The pressures he faced daily far exceeded what the average person could imagine. Harsh criticism, opposition from political rivals, defeats on the battlefield, and suspicion from his own comrades were commonplace. In such circumstances, allowing anger to take over could have had extremely serious consequences. He had a peculiar habit that he maintained for many years. When he was angry or disappointed with someone, he would sit down and write a letter. In those letters, he didn't hold back his emotions. He wrote down all the thoughts that were welling up inside him, the reproaches, the harsh criticisms. He poured all his frustration onto the paper. But the important thing was that he didn't send them. After writing, he would often fold the letter and put it away. Sometimes he would reread it the next day, when his mind was calmer. Many such letters were never sent to their recipients. They existed simply as a way for him to release his emotions without causing actual harm. That seemingly simple act demonstrated profound emotional intelligence. He understood that momentary emotions don't always reflect the whole truth. In a moment of anger, we easily see things through a negative lens. We exaggerate the mistakes of others and forget objective factors. If he had sent those letters immediately, they could have damaged relationships with generals or political allies, or even harmed joint efforts during wartime. Writing but not sending allowed him to create a distance between emotion and action. The page became a safe haven for releasing pressure. When emotions were expressed in writing, their intensity gradually diminished. Then, upon rereading with a calm mind, he could reassess the issue more objectively. Things that seemed unacceptable yesterday could now be viewed with empathy. In the context of leading a deeply divided nation, this ability to restrain himself is particularly crucial. Every decision and every word he speaks carries significant weight. An impulsive reaction could be exploited and exacerbate conflict. By not letting anger take control, he protects not only his personal reputation, but also the stability of the country. That story shows that controlling emotions doesn't mean suppressing them completely. He didn't pretend he wasn't angry. He acknowledged the emotion and allowed it to be expressed on paper, but he chose not to let it escalate into harmful actions. This is the difference between emotion and decision. Emotions can be natural and powerful, but decisions require wisdom. The habit of writing unsent letters is also a form of self-reflection. When writing, he is forced to organize his thoughts into words. This process helps clarify the cause of his anger. Often, when he sees his thoughts clearly presented, he realizes they are not entirely logical. Writing things down makes emotions concrete, and when they are concretized, he can examine them more thoroughly. The lesson from this story remains relevant in modern life. We may not lead a nation, but everyone experiences situations that make them angry. A thoughtless text message, a comment on social media, a criticism at work can all trigger a strong reaction. If we respond immediately, while in a state of heightened emotion, we are more likely to say things we will regret. Applying his method, we can write down our thoughts before responding. It could be an unsent email draft. It could be a few notes on our phone. Once the emotions are released, we give ourselves a chance to reconsider. When we reread it calmly, we can edit the wording, change the tone, or even decide not to send it at all. The ability to delay an immediate reaction is a sign of self-control. It shows that we are not controlled by fleeting emotions. In many cases, simply slowing down a little is enough to avoid unnecessary conflict. A relationship is preserved. An opportunity is not lost. An important decision is not swayed by anger. Abraham Lincoln's story reminds us that composure is not innate. It is the result of habit and personal discipline. By a simple act, like writing a letter and putting it away, he created space for himself to think. It was this space that helped him maintain his clarity of mind during a turbulent period. In our daily lives, we can also create similar pauses for ourselves. When emotions run high, instead of reacting immediately, find a safe way to release them. Write it down, go for a walk, take deep breaths, or simply wait until the next day. These moments of delay may not change the situation immediately, but they change how we face it. From a small habit, we learn a big lesson. Not everything we think in anger needs to be said. Not every emotion needs to be turned into action. By knowing to keep those letters that shouldn't be sent, we are protecting our own future and the relationships around us. Words spoken in anger can destroy years of a relationship. Just a few seconds of losing control, what has been built on trust, love, and understanding over a long period can crumble. The problem is that once the anger subsides, we may forget what we said, but the listener doesn't. They carry those words like a silent wound, repeating them in their mind many times over. Words can sometimes inflict deeper wounds than actions. An action might cause physical pain, but words touch upon self-esteem, self-worth, and feelings of respect. When someone is insulted, denied, or disrespected verbally, the damage can last a long time. It's invisible, but it's insidious and difficult to heal. When people are angry, the emotional part of the brain becomes more active than the rational part. We react quickly to protect ourselves. In that state, we tend to exaggerate the mistakes of others and forget the good things they have done. Phrases like "you're always like that," "you never do anything right," or "I'm so tired of you" can be easily uttered. But each such statement is like an invisible knife. In families, angry words can have long-lasting consequences. A father, in a fit of frustration, might blurt out that his child is useless. The child might remain silent at the time, but the words will resonate in their mind as they face challenges later. They may doubt their own abilities, fear failure, or constantly feel inadequate. A fleeting remark can become a limiting belief that lasts for years. In relationships, Hurtful words often arise when two people feel misunderstood. Instead of saying, "I'm upset and need to be heard," we might say, "You never care about me." Instead of admitting disappointment, we attack each other's weaknesses. When these words are repeated, trust and security in the relationship gradually diminish. People become defensive, distance themselves, and are no longer as open as before. In the workplace, angry words can destroy cooperation. A manager who loses their temper and criticizes an employee in front of everyone can cause them embarrassment and demotivation. Even if they apologize afterward, the feeling of being humiliated in front of others remains. Employees may continue working, but their enthusiasm and loyalty have been affected. The reason words can be so hurtful is because they touch upon a person's identity. Actions are usually related to specific events, but words are often judgmental. When we say you're selfish, we're not just criticizing an action. We're labeling the entire person. That label makes the listener feel completely rejected. Many people justify their words by saying they said it out of anger, that they didn't mean it that way. However, the listener cannot simply erase the feeling of hurt just because the speaker didn't mean it. Emotions don't work that way. When hurt, the body reacts as if facing a threat. Heart rate increases, the mind becomes alert, and trust is shaken. Another problem is that words once spoken cannot be taken back. We can apologize, but we cannot make the other person completely forget. Like a crack in glass, even if patched up, the mark remains. This doesn't mean every angry word ends a relationship, but they weaken the foundation if repeated many times. Controlling your words when angry isn't about suppressing your emotions. Emotions need to be acknowledged. The important thing is how you express them. Instead of saying, "You're driving me crazy," you could say, "I'm very stressed and need some time." Instead of attacking, you describe your feelings. This way of expressing yourself doesn't deny the emotion but minimizes hurt for the other person. A helpful skill is to pause before speaking. When you realize you're getting angry, stop for a few seconds. Take a deep breath and ask yourself whether this statement will help resolve the issue or just satisfy your anger temporarily. If the answer is simply to vent your anger, perhaps you should wait longer. That short pause can save a long-term relationship. Listening is also crucial. Many arguments escalate because both sides want to talk but neither wants to listen. When people feel heard, they become less defensive. They are less defensive, they are less likely to use hurtful words. Understanding doesn't eliminate disagreement, but it reduces the intensity of conflict. We also need to learn how to apologize properly. A sincere apology isn't just, "I'm sorry if you feel bad." It's an acknowledgement that I said things I shouldn't have said, and that I understand they hurt you. When the speaker takes responsibility for their words, the chances of reconciliation are higher. However, an apology shouldn't be an excuse to repeat the same behavior. It's thought-provoking that we are often polite to strangers but harsh to our loved ones. We assume they will understand and forgive. But it is precisely because of this close relationship that the hurt is even deeper. Family is where we seek safety, and when that safety is shattered by words, feelings of betrayal can arise. Words have both the power to build and the power to destroy. A well-timed word of encouragement can change someone's entire day. Conversely, an insult can leave them feeling insecure for a long time. The difference lies in the speaker's awareness and choice. We can't completely eliminate anger as it's a natural reaction, but we can learn to manage it. When we understand that every word leaves an impression, we become more cautious, not to become fake or repressed, but to protect what we cherish. Relationships are built over time with patience and trust. Just a few thoughtless words can shake that foundation. So before speaking in anger, remember that words don't disappear after the sound fades. They remain in the listener's memory. Sometimes the right silence is the greatest expression of maturity. Words spoken in anger can destroy years of a relationship. Just a few seconds of losing control, what has been built on trust, love, and understanding over a long period can crumble. The problem is that once the anger subsides, we may forget what we said, but the listener doesn't. They carry those words like a silent wound, repeating them in their mind many times over. Words can sometimes inflict deeper wounds than actions. An action might cause physical pain, but words touch upon self-esteem, self-worth, and feelings of respect. When someone is insulted, denied, or disrespected verbally, the damage can last a long time. It's invisible, but it's insidious and difficult to heal. When people are angry, the emotional part of the brain becomes more active than the rational part. We react quickly to protect ourselves. In that state, we tend to exaggerate the mistakes of others and forget the good things they have done. Phrases like "you're always like that," "you never do anything right," or "I'm so tired of you" can be easily uttered. But each such statement is like an invisible knife. In families, angry words can have long-lasting consequences. A father, in a fit of frustration, might blurt out that his child is useless. The child might remain silent at the time, but the words will resonate in their mind as they face challenges later. They may doubt their own abilities, fear failure, or constantly feel inadequate. A fleeting remark can become a limiting belief that lasts for years. In relationships, hurtful words often arise when two people feel misunderstood. Instead of saying, "I'm upset and need to be heard," we might say, "You never care about me." Instead of admitting disappointment, we attack each other's weaknesses. When these words are repeated, trust and security in the relationship gradually diminish. People become defensive, distance themselves, and are no longer as open as before. In the workplace, angry words can destroy cooperation. A manager who loses their temper and criticizes an employee in front of everyone can cause them embarrassment and demotivation. Even if they apologize afterward, the feeling of being humiliated in front of others remains. Employees may continue working, but their enthusiasm and loyalty have been affected. The reason words can be so hurtful is because they touch upon a person's identity. Actions are usually related to specific events, but words are often judgmental. When we say "you're selfish," we're not just criticizing an action. We're labeling the entire person. That label makes the listener feel completely rejected. Many people justify their words by saying they said it out of anger, that they didn't mean it that way. However, the listener cannot simply erase the feeling of hurt just because the speaker didn't mean it. Emotions don't work that way. When hurt, the body reacts as if facing a threat. Heart rate increases, the mind becomes alert, and trust is shaken. Another problem is that words once spoken cannot be taken back. We can apologize, but we cannot make the other person completely forget. Like a crack in glass, even if patched up, the mark remains. This doesn't mean every angry word ends a relationship, but they weaken the foundation if repeated many times. Controlling your words when angry isn't about suppressing your emotions. Emotions need to be acknowledged. The important thing is how you express them. Instead of saying, "You're driving me crazy," you could say, "I'm very stressed and need some time." Instead of attacking, you describe your feelings. This way of expressing yourself doesn't deny the emotion but minimizes hurt for the other person. A helpful skill is to pause before speaking. When you realize you're getting angry, stop for a few seconds. Take a deep breath and ask yourself whether this statement will help resolve the issue or just satisfy your anger temporarily. If the answer is simply to vent your anger, perhaps you should wait longer. That short pause can save a long-term relationship. Listening is also crucial. Many arguments escalate because both sides want to talk but neither wants to listen. When people feel heard, they become less defensive. They are less defensive, they are less likely to use hurtful words. Understanding doesn't eliminate disagreement, but it reduces the intensity of conflict. We also need to learn how to apologize properly. A sincere apology isn't just, "I'm sorry if you feel bad." It's an acknowledgement that I said things I shouldn't have said, and that I understand they hurt you. When the speaker takes responsibility for their words, the chances of reconciliation are higher. However, an apology shouldn't be an excuse to repeat the same behavior. It's thought-provoking that we are often polite to strangers but harsh to our loved ones. We assume they will understand and forgive. But it is precisely because of this close relationship that the hurt is even deeper. Family is where we seek safety, and when that safety is shattered by words, feelings of betrayal can arise. Words have both the power to build and the power to destroy. A well-timed word of encouragement can change someone's entire day. Conversely, an insult can leave them feeling insecure for a long time. The difference lies in the speaker's awareness and choice. We can't completely eliminate anger as it's a natural reaction, but we can learn to manage it. When we understand that every word leaves an impression, we become more cautious, not to become fake or repressed, but to protect what we cherish. Relationships are built over time with patience and trust, Just a few thoughtless words can shake that foundation. So before speaking in anger, remember that words don't disappear after the sound fades. They remain in the listener's memory. Sometimes the right silence is the greatest expression of maturity. The story of a young manager begins with high expectations. He was promoted at a young age, full of enthusiasm and a desire to prove his abilities. He was intelligent, hardworking, and highly skilled. But he also had a weakness that he didn't realize at first: his reaction when things didn't go as planned. Whenever mistakes occurred at work, he would often yell at his employees. He believed that pressure would make them more careful. When he saw inaccurate reports, he would immediately raise his voice in meetings. Projects fell behind schedule, he would harshly criticize them in front of the entire team. Thought he was protecting the quality of work and maintaining discipline. In his mind, a strong leader is someone who is unforgiving of mistakes. Initially, employees tried to work more carefully to avoid being reprimanded. But the atmosphere in the team gradually changed. People became hesitant to speak up. They were afraid to offer new ideas for fear of severe criticism if they failed. Meetings became quieter. Creativity decreased. Instead of focusing on solutions, many people were just trying to protect themselves. The result was a fragmented team and declining performance. Small mistakes weren't shared early because employees feared management's reaction. By the time the problem was discovered, it had become more serious. The lack of trust gradually built up. Employees started looking for opportunities elsewhere. Several talented people resigned. The young manager began to feel frustrated. He couldn't understand why. Despite his efforts, the results were declining. One time, after a veteran employee resigned, he decided to ask directly why. The employee shared that he was competent, but his reaction kept everyone on edge. They didn't feel safe learning from their mistakes, felt judged instead of supported. That conversation made him think. He began to reflect on himself. He realized that each time he yelled, he was actually reacting to his own anxieties. He feared failure, feared being judged by his superiors, feared losing face. His anger didn't stem entirely from his employees, but from internal pressure. But instead of acknowledging it, he vented it outwardly. From then on, he decided to change. For the first time, when a project encountered a problem, instead of getting angry, he took a deep breath and asked the whole team to analyze the cause. He listened to each person's presentation. He asked questions to understand the process instead of criticizing individuals. That meeting was no longer as tense as before. Employees started sharing more. The change didn't happen overnight. There were times when anger still welled up inside him, but he learned to stop before speaking. He asked himself what his goal was: to vent his anger or to improve the outcome. When focusing on long-term goals, he chose his words more carefully. Gradually, the team became more cohesive. Employees felt respected. They began proactively reporting problems early instead of hiding them. They suggested process improvements they had previously been hesitant to discuss. Meetings became more lively. Mistakes didn't disappear completely, but the way they were handled changed. Mistakes became learning opportunities instead of sources of fear. Performance improved significantly. Projects were completed on time more often. Turnover rates decreased. More importantly, the work atmosphere became more positive. The young manager realized that leadership is not about controlling through fear, but about leading through trust. He also realized that calmly listening didn't weaken him. On the contrary, it helped him gain a more comprehensive perspective. By listening, he understood the real difficulties his employees faced. Many mistakes weren't due to irresponsibility, but rather to inefficient processes. If he only yelled and scolded, he would never see the root cause. His story illustrates the impact of emotions in leadership. A manager may be highly skilled professionally, but if they can't control their anger, they can inadvertently undermine their own team. Fear may create short-term compliance, but it doesn't create long-term commitment. Conversely, when leaders control their emotions and choose respectful communication methods, they build a psychologically safe environment. In such an environment, people dare to try, dare to make mistakes, and dare to learn. This creates the foundation for innovation and sustainable development. After a period of change, the young manager received positive feedback from both his team and superiors. He not only improved his work performance, but also matured in his understanding of his role. He understood that true power doesn't lie in being able to raise your voice, but in the ability to remain calm when things aren't perfect. The lesson from this story isn't just for managers. Anyone working in a team will at some point face mistakes and pressure. How we react to others' mistakes reflects our own level of maturity. By choosing to listen instead of scolding, we create opportunities for connection. The young manager's transformation began with recognizing the problem and daring to make adjustments. He didn't blame the circumstances or the employees. He looked at himself. This self-awareness opened the path to improvement, and from there, the entire team benefited. In the workplace, results stem not only from skills, but also from how people treat each other. A calm word can be encouraging. Sincere listening can inspire motivation. When leaders control their anger and choose positive communication, they not only improve performance, but also build a sustainable organizational culture. Controlling anger isn't about suppressing it. It's about understanding your emotions and choosing a wiser way to react. Many people confuse control with suppression. They think that not expressing anger immediately means they are enduring it, pretending to be calm. But in reality, controlling emotions is an active and conscious process. It requires recognition, understanding, and choice, not denial or rejection. Anger is a natural human reaction. Feeling offended, wronged, or threatened, the body immediately activates a defense mechanism. Heart rate increases, breathing becomes rapid, and muscles tense up. This is a survival mechanism that has existed for a long time. Therefore, anger itself is not a bad thing. The issue is not whether we are angry or not, but how we handle that anger. Suppression is when we try to push emotions down, pretending nothing is wrong. Outwardly, we may appear calm, but inwardly, we harbor resentment. When suppressed for a long time, emotions accumulate and can explode at another time, even more intensely. People who suppress their feelings often feel tired, stressed, and irritable without understanding the cause. Conversely, control is the process of acknowledging that we are angry. We don't deny the emotion. We can tell ourselves, "I'm very upset. I feel hurt." This acknowledgement helps us connect with ourselves instead of running away. When we identify the emotion, we have the opportunity to choose a response instead of a reaction. Reflexes are almost automatic actions. If someone says something that annoys us, we immediately retaliate. If someone makes a mistake, we immediately yell. These reflexes often stem from old habits or inner fears. Meanwhile, a wise response requires a pause. That pause may only last a few seconds, but it's enough time for reason to get involved in the decision-making process. Understanding our emotions means going beyond the surface of anger. Often what we feel isn't just anger. Behind it might be frustration, sadness, feelings of abandonment, or pressure. For example, a father who gets angry when his child gets a homework problem wrong might actually be worried about his child's future. A manager who yells at an employee might be afraid the project will fail. By understanding the root cause, we can express our emotions more appropriately. Instead of saying, "You're driving me crazy," a father might say, "I'm worried because you don't understand the lesson." Instead of saying, "How irresponsible you are," a wife might say, "I feel exhausted having to do everything alone." Changing the wording doesn't diminish the emotion, but it reduces the hurt felt by the listener. Controlling anger also involves taking responsibility for your own emotions. No one can make you angry if you don't allow that reaction to occur. This doesn't mean denying the other person's wrongdoing, but rather acknowledging that emotions are your own. When you say "you made me furious," you're putting control in the other person's hands. When you say "I'm very angry about this," you're retaining control for yourself. A crucial element in responding wisely is long-term goals. When angry, we often focus on releasing our emotions immediately. But if we think further ahead, we'll ask ourselves whether what we're about to say will help improve the relationship or just satisfy our anger. Long-term goals such as preserving family, building teams, or maintaining friendships can help us choose a more mature way of behaving. Practicing anger control requires persistence. No one changes after just one attempt. There may be times when we still say things we shouldn't. The important thing is to look back and learn from the experience. Each time we realize it sooner and stop faster, we are making progress. A simple method is to observe your body. When you notice your heart racing, your voice rising, and your hands clenching, these are signals that anger is escalating. Instead of continuing the argument, you can suggest a break. A short period of deep breathing or walking can help calm your nervous system. When your body is calmer, your thoughts will be clearer. Furthermore, developing self-care habits can also help reduce the frequency of anger. Lack of sleep, prolonged stress, and poor nutrition all impair the ability to control emotions. When the body and mind are in better condition, we are more likely to react calmly to stimuli. Controlling anger is also a way to set an example for others. Children learn how to manage emotions by observing adults. Employees learn how to communicate by looking at their leaders. When we choose to react wisely, we not only protect ourselves, but also contribute to creating a healthy environment around us. It's important not to overreact when you lose your temper. Heavy self-blame can lead to guilt and perpetuate a negative cycle. Instead, recognize that you are human and in a learning process. Self-forgiveness coupled with a commitment to improvement leads to more sustainable progress. Ultimately, controlling anger is a sign of emotional maturity. Maturity doesn't mean the absence of anger, but rather knowing how to be angry consciously. By understanding our emotions and choosing wiser ways to react, we protect relationships, maintain respect, and preserve our self-worth. Anger can come very quickly, but how we respond determines the direction of the situation. There is always a space between the stimulus and the reaction. Within that space lies our power of choice. By knowing how to use that power of choice, we transform anger from a source of harm into an opportunity to understand ourselves more deeply and grow stronger each day. Nelson Mandela's story is a profound testament to the power of emotional control. After years of imprisonment, he chose not revenge, but reconciliation. That very emotional control transformed an entire nation. In a context of enduring injustice and generations of accumulated suffering, his choice was not easy. But it opened a different path for history. He was sentenced to prison and spent nearly 3 decades incarcerated. Those years were not only a deprivation of his freedom, but also a test of his spirit. Isolated, forced labor, facing discrimination and harsh treatment, he had every reason to harbor resentment. Anyone in that situation could have been consumed by feelings of bitterness, but he chose a different path. During his imprisonment, he had many opportunities for reflection. He understood that if he allowed hatred to control him, he would remain imprisoned in his mind even after his release. He once shared that when he walked out of the prison gates, if he didn't leave bitterness behind, he would still be in prison. That statement reveals a profound awareness of the power of emotions. Upon his release and subsequent presidency, he did not call for retaliation against those who had oppressed him. Instead, he advocated for national reconciliation. He understood that a nation divided by hatred could not sustainably develop. If he reignited anger and incited revenge, the country could spiral into new violence. Controlling emotions at the individual level has become a leadership strategy at the national level. He proactively reaches out to those who were once his rivals. He appears alongside them at public events. He sends the message that the future is more important than the past. This action doesn't erase past injustices, but lays the groundwork for healing. The choice of reconciliation does not mean denying the pain. He is not saying that everything is fine or that nothing serious has happened. On the contrary, he acknowledges the deep wounds that people have suffered. But he believes that justice can go hand in hand with tolerance. The difference lies in the approach. Instead of using anger to drive change, he uses vision and calmness. This required a very high degree of emotional self-control. After years of imprisonment, not letting negative emotions control his actions was a great achievement. He understood that leadership was not just about formulating policies, but also about shaping collective emotions. If he expressed resentment, millions could be swept along. If he displayed calmness and forgiveness, that too would spread. His emotional control inspired trust. People saw in him not weakness, but inner strength. Forgiveness in that situation was not a concession, but a conscious choice to move towards a better future. He showed that controlling anger does not diminish credibility, but enhances moral standing. This story reminds us that personal emotions can have an impact far beyond the private sphere. In a family, anger can damage relationships. In an organization, temper tantrums can weaken teamwork. At the national level, hatred can lead to prolonged conflict. Conversely, calm and reconciliation can create a turning point. Many people believe that forgiveness is about forgetting, but in reality, forgiveness is about freeing oneself from the burden of the past. When we hold on to anger, we empower the past to control the present. When we let go, we regain control. He demonstrated this through concrete actions, not just words. A nation's transformation doesn't come from a single decision, but from a series of consecutive steps. But the first step is changing how we react. If he had chosen revenge, history might have taken a different turn. The decision to control his emotions and pursue reconciliation laid the foundation for this transformation. The lessons from Nelson Mandela's story aren't just for leaders. Each of us has experienced painful situations. It might not be years of imprisonment, but injustice, misunderstanding, or betrayal. We can choose to hold on to resentment, or we can choose to confront and let go. That choice affects the quality of our lives. Controlling emotions doesn't mean denying pain. It's about accepting that pain exists, but not letting it control the future. When we learn to manage anger and direct our energy toward building instead of destroying, we create opportunities for positive change. This story shows that true strength lies not in the ability to overpower others, but in the ability to master oneself. After years of hardship, he maintained his composure and vision. It was this quality that inspired millions and contributed to changing the destiny of the nation. In our daily lives, we may not face such immense challenges. But each time we stand before a choice between anger and calm, we are writing our own story. By choosing a wiser response, we not only protect relationships, but also contribute to creating a more positive environment around us. Nelson Mandela's emotional control demonstrates that an individual can have a profound impact if they master their inner self. Emerging from prison with a spirit of reconciliation, he proved that the greatest freedom is not physical freedom, but freedom from hatred. And it was this freedom that opened a new path for an entire nation. A truly mature person knows when to stop before reacting. A deep breath can save a relationship. In moments of heightened emotion, the difference between breakdown and understanding sometimes lies in just a few seconds of silence. It's not about who speaks faster or more forcefully. A truly mature person is someone who is level-headed enough to slow down. When something that hurts us is touched upon, our natural reaction is usually very quick. Our heart races, our voice rises, and our thoughts become more intense. We want to retaliate immediately to protect ourselves. It's a survival mechanism deeply ingrained in humans. But in relationships, this instinctive reaction doesn't always yield positive results. Many arguments start from very small things. It's an insensitive remark, an unintentional action, an unexplained misunderstanding. If both sides react immediately emotionally, the conflict escalates. Words become sharper. Each person tries to prove they are right, instead of trying to understand the other. In just a few minutes, the relationship can be deeply damaged. Stopping isn't a sign of weakness. Stopping is a sign of inner strength. When we recognize our anger and consciously take deep breaths, we're regaining control. Breathing helps the body readjust. As breathing slows and deepens, the nervous system stabilizes. From there, thoughts become clearer. A deep breath can create a gap between provocation and reaction. In that gap, we have a choice. We can choose to say something hurtful or choose to express ourselves in a more respectful way. We can choose to leave the argument for a few minutes to calm down or continue to let our emotions guide us. In a family, that pause is especially important. When parents are tired after a long day, even a child's mischievous behavior can make them angry. But if they can stop and take a breath, they might realize the child didn't mean to upset them. Instead of yelling, they can gently explain. This difference in reaction can affect the child's memory for years to come. In love, many relationships break down not because of major problems, but because of how those problems are handled. When feeling misunderstood, it's easy to say hurtful things. But if we pause for a few seconds, we might realize we're more sad than angry. When we express sadness instead of attacking, the other person is more likely to listen. In the workplace, people who know when to stop before reacting are generally more respected. A manager might get angry immediately upon receiving a report of a mistake. But if he takes a breath and asks for clarification, he can find a solution instead of creating fear. The team will feel safer sharing and improving. True strength of character isn't about never getting angry. True strength of character is about recognizing anger and not letting it control your actions. Everyone can react instinctively. Not everyone can stop themselves in the midst of a heated emotion. That pause requires self-awareness and practice. A simple yet significant deep breath carries great meaning. By focusing on our breath, we bring our attention back to the present moment. We detach ourselves from the negative thoughts that are sweeping us away. The body and mind reconnect. Just a few deep inhalations and slow exhalations can significantly reduce emotional intensity. Many people, after calming down, often say, "How much better it would have been if I hadn't said that." This shows that much of the hurt comes from immediate reactions. If there had been a few more seconds to think, the outcome could have been different. Therefore, cultivating the habit of pausing is an investment in long-term relationships. This habit doesn't come naturally. It needs to be practiced every day. When faced with a small, unpleasant situation, we can try pausing instead of reacting immediately. Over time, the brain develops a new pathway. Instead of an automatic reflex, we become accustomed to creating space before speaking. Pausing also helps us listen better. When we're not caught up in preparing a counterattack, we can fully hear what the other person is saying. Many misunderstandings are resolved simply because one person is calm enough to listen to the end. Listening is not just an outward action, but also an attitude of respect. A lasting relationship isn't one without conflict. It's one where both parties know how to handle conflict maturely. When both know when to pause before reacting, they create a safe space for dialogue. That safety is the foundation of trust. In the heat of anger, stopping can feel incredibly difficult. Emotions threaten to explode. But at that very moment, a deep breath becomes all the more necessary. It reminds us that we are not our anger. We have the right to choose how we act. People with strong character don't need to prove they're right by raising their voices. They prove it through composure. When others lose control and you remain calm, you create stability in the situation. That stability is contagious. It calms the atmosphere and paves the way for a solution. Ultimately, every relationship is built on many small moments. A well-thought-out word can strengthen trust. An impulsive reaction can shake it. When we choose to stop and take a deep breath, we are protecting what we cherish. A deep breath may sound simple, but in reality, it can save a relationship. It transforms conflict into an opportunity for understanding. It turns anger into a lesson in growth. And in every moment we choose to pause before reacting, we are becoming a more resilient version of ourselves. Anger clouds reason. When emotions take over, we tend to see problems in the most negative light. In that moment, everything seems more serious than it actually is. Unintentional remark can be interpreted as an insult. A small mistake can be seen as a major failure. Anger is like a dark pane of glass, causing us to see the world through a distorted lens. When anger arises, the body reacts very quickly. Heart rate increases, breathing becomes rapid, and muscles tense up. The brain prioritizes the emotional area over the analytical area. This used to help humans survive danger, but in modern life, most situations are not life-threatening. The reaction still occurs with the same intensity. As a result, we overreact to problems that could be solved calmly. When reason is clouded, we tend to think in extremes. We easily generalize. Because of one mistake, we might think the other person is always like that. Because of one rejection, we might believe we will never be respected. This way of thinking increases negativity and strains the relationship. In families, when parents are angry, they may view their children's actions in the worst possible light. Forgetting homework once might be interpreted as laziness. Disobeying someone might be seen as disrespectful. If reason doesn't intervene quickly, harsh reprimands may be uttered. Later, when they calm down, parents may realize that their reaction was excessive. In relationships, anger can easily lead to suspicion. A slow reply to a text message might be misinterpreted as indifference. A canceled date might be seen as a lack of concern. When emotions take over, we no longer see the other person's previous efforts. We only focus on what annoys us. This bias escalates conflict. In the workplace, when leaders are angry, they may misjudge the situation. A delayed project might lead them to believe the entire team is irresponsible, when in reality, it could be due to flawed processes. When reason is clouded, decisions are often based on immediate emotions rather than data analysis. This can lead to long-term consequences. Anger not only affects how we see others, but also how we see ourselves. When we fail and are angry with ourselves, we can become overly self-critical. We easily think we're useless, that we'll never succeed. These negative thoughts don't reflect who we are, but in anger they become very convincing. One characteristic of anger is narrowing one's perspective. We focus on a single point of annoyance, forgetting the bigger picture. For example, in a long-term relationship, a single argument can cause us to forget hundreds of positive moments that preceded it. If reason prevails, it will remind us that no one is perfect, and one event doesn't define the entire relationship. When emotions take over, we are more likely to misinterpret others' intentions in a negative way. We assume they are deliberately trying to hurt us. In reality, many actions stem from misunderstandings or a lack of information. If we calmly ask for clarification, we may realize the situation isn't as serious as we thought. To avoid losing your composure, it's crucial to recognize anger early. When you notice yourself starting to get upset, you can stop. A few deep breaths can help reduce the intensity of your emotions. Once your body is calmer, your ability to think logically will return. This pause won't solve the problem immediately, but it will prevent you from making poor decisions. Another approach is to ask yourself questions. Am I exaggerating the problem? Is there another explanation for this behavior? Looking back a day later, would I still see it as seriously as I do now? These questions help broaden your perspective and bring rationality back. Cultivating a positive mindset is also helpful during stressful times. When we get used to viewing things from multiple perspectives, we are less likely to be drawn to the negative side. This doesn't mean denying the problem, but rather evaluating it in a more balanced way. Furthermore, taking care of both mental and physical health plays a crucial role. When fatigued, sleep-deprived, or under prolonged stress, the ability to control emotions decreases. At such times, anger is more likely to erupt, and reason is less likely to intervene. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle helps increase self-control. It's important to note that anger itself isn't the enemy. It's a signal that something is wrong. If handled correctly, it can spur positive change. But if emotions overwhelm and cloud reason, it can destroy many valuable things. Each time we choose to pause and think before reacting, we are strengthening our self-control. Gradually, we will realize that not every stimulus requires an immediate response. There are situations that need time to fully understand. There are words that should be carefully considered. Life is full of unexpected things. Anger is inevitable. We can learn not to let reason completely cloud our judgment. By maintaining clarity amidst emotions, we protect our relationships, our work, and our self-respect. Anger clouds reason, but only if we allow it to control us. When we recognize, pause, and reconsider, we restore balance. And it is in that balance that we find more effective ways to solve problems and live more peacefully. Successful people often cultivate calmness every day. They understand that losing control of emotions means losing control of their lives. In the journey of self-development, professional skills and knowledge are important, but the ability to master emotions is the solid foundation. When emotions dominate actions, decisions are easily misguided. When the mind is stable, choices become wiser. Calmness is not a natural state that everyone possesses. It is the result of continuous practice. Successful people don't wait for a crisis to learn how to stay calm. They build emotional management habits from small things in their daily lives. When faced with unpleasant situations, they observe their reaction instead of reacting immediately. One of the reasons successful people value composure is because they have to make many important decisions. In business, a hasty decision can cause significant damage. Investing, a moment of panic can lead to missed long-term opportunities. In people management, an uncontrolled remark can erode team trust. Therefore, maintaining composure is a competitive advantage. When emotions get out of control, we are more likely to act impulsively. For example, when the market is volatile, an impatient person might panic and sell off their holdings. When criticized, a person lacking self-control might react aggressively and damage the relationship. Conversely, a calm person will pause, analyze the situation, and consider the consequences before acting. Composure helps maintain a long-term vision. Successful people often set big goals and understand that the journey will be challenging. If every difficulty makes them angry or discouraged, they are unlikely to reach the end. The ability to remain steadfast amidst change allows them to keep moving forward when others have given up. Cultivating calmness begins with recognizing emotions. When feeling angry, anxious, or frustrated, they don't deny it but observe. They ask themselves why they react that way. Understanding the cause helps reduce the intensity of the emotion. When emotions are named, they become less ambiguous and easier to control. Many successful people maintain habits such as meditation, deep breathing, or journaling. These activities help them connect with their inner selves and relieve stress. When the mind is regularly cared for, they are less likely to be drawn into extreme reactions. Inner stability creates outer strength. Another factor is the ability to separate the event from the interpretation. When faced with failure, an unperturbed person might think they are incompetent. A calm person sees it as data for improvement. They don't let an event define their self-worth. As a result, they maintain motivation and confidence. Losing control of emotions often leads to losing control of actions. When angry, we may say hurtful things. When overly anxious, we may avoid opportunities. When jealous, we may behave unprofessionally. These actions not only affect the present, but also have long-term consequences. Successful people understand this, which is why they prioritize emotional management as a core skill. In leadership roles, composure becomes even more crucial. When a team faces a crisis, they look to their leader for stability. If the leader panics, insecurity spreads. If the leader remains calm, the team gains confidence. One person's emotions can affect many others. Calmness doesn't equate to indifference. Successful people remain deeply committed to their work and goals. The difference lies in how they react. They don't let fleeting emotions derail their strategy. They understand that a hasty decision can ruin years of hard work. Cultivating calmness also helps improve personal relationships. Within family and among friends, the ability to listen and respond maturely fosters trust. People who can control their emotions are less likely to cause harm and are more easily respected. Emotional stability forms the foundation for lasting relationships. It's worth noting that calmness helps conserve energy. Strong negative emotions consume a lot of energy. When anger persists, the body becomes fatigued and the mind becomes disordered. People who know how to regulate their emotions can focus their energy on solving problems instead of fueling tension. The journey to cultivating composure isn't always easy. There are days when overwhelming pressure makes it easy for emotions to erupt. But each time we succeed in staying calm, we reinforce our belief in our ability to control ourselves. Over time, a calm response becomes a natural habit. Successful people understand that life always has elements beyond their control. Markets change, circumstances fluctuate, and people may behave unexpectedly. But their emotions are something they can train. By maintaining inner control, they are not swept away by circumstances. They choose how to react in a way that aligns with their long-term goals. Ultimately, composure is the foundation of freedom. When emotions don't control us, we have the right to choose our own path. Losing emotional control means handing over control to circumstances or others. Maintaining composure is maintaining control of one's life. Successful people are not perfect and sometimes get angry or anxious, but they understand the importance of adjustment. They practice every day, starting with the smallest things. It is this perseverance that helps them stand firm in the face of challenges and go further on their journey. Silence at the right time is strength. Not every argument needs to be won. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, wants to assert their individuality, and defend their point of view, silence is often misinterpreted as weakness. But in reality, knowing when to be silent is a sign of character and maturity. It's not avoidance, nor is it defeat. It's a conscious choice to protect a greater value. When conflict arises, the natural human reaction is to prove oneself right. Emotions run high, making words sharp. We seek every argument to refute the other person. But in many cases, trying to win an argument only damages the relationship. Winning logically can mean losing respect and goodwill. Silence at the right time helps break the escalating spiral of emotions. When one side is angry, if the other reacts similarly, the conflict will quickly spiral out of control. But if one person chooses to remain silent, chooses to pause, the tension will subside. That silence acts as a necessary pause for both sides to regain their composure. Not every argument is worth participating in. Some disagreements stem from minor misunderstandings. Some are simply differences in perspective. And there are situations where the other person isn't genuinely willing to listen. In those cases, trying to persuade them only wastes energy. Silence allows us to conserve our energy for more important matters. Silence also demonstrates the ability to control one's ego. When criticized or misunderstood, instinct drives us to react immediately. But mature individuals know to ask themselves whether reacting at this moment would bring any positive results. If the answer is no, they are willing to choose silence. This is a decision based on reason, not emotion. In a family, knowing when to be silent can preserve warmth. There are times when loved ones say harsh things when they are tired or stressed. If we respond aggressively, the conflict will only last. But if we step back, remain silent, and wait for the right moment to talk, the atmosphere will calm down. That silence isn't an acceptance of wrongdoing, but rather a wiser choice of resolution. In the workplace, not every meeting requires proving superiority. Some differing opinions simply reflect different perspectives. If we argue relentlessly just to assert ourselves, the team may lose cooperation. Conversely, listening quietly allows us to gain a deeper understanding of the issue and build a shared solution. Silence also creates space for reflection. When we don't rush to react, we have time to look back at our emotions. We ask ourselves why those words upset us. Perhaps it's because old wounds haven't healed. Perhaps it's because we're overly sensitive at the moment. Thanks to that pause, our subsequent reaction will be more thoughtful. Many people fear that silence is tantamount to letting others take advantage. In reality, knowing when to be silent doesn't mean giving up your point of view. It simply means choosing the right time to speak up. There are things that need to be said, but it's not necessary to say them when emotions are still high. When both sides have calmed down, the exchange will be much more effective. Not every argument needs to be won, because life isn't a constant battle. So the ultimate goal isn't to prove you right, but to maintain harmony and move forward. Sometimes giving way opens the door to understanding. When we're not trying to win, it's easier to see common ground. Silence is also a way to protect one's own dignity. When arguments become heated, words can go too far. A single word spoken in anger can cause deep hurt. If we choose silence instead of speaking thoughtlessly, we maintain respect for ourselves and others. Timely silence also allows us to observe more. When we're not preoccupied with arguing, we can listen fully. We realize what the other person truly wants to say, not just the surface of the words. Often, behind anger lies anxiety. Behind criticism lies a desire to be understood. Only in silence can we hear these things. However, silence shouldn't become a long-term avoidance. There are issues that need to be addressed clearly. Silence at the right time is the first step in controlling emotions, but honest dialogue is necessary afterward. The strength lies in the ability to choose the right time and manner, not in remaining silent forever. Cultivating the ability to remain silent at the right time requires self-awareness. We need to understand our limits, to know when emotions are running high. A deep breath, a brief pause can change the entire course of an argument. By not reacting immediately, we regain control. In the journey of growing up, we will encounter many situations of disagreement. Conflict is not always avoidable, but we always have the power to choose how to react. Knowing when to be silent is one of the most powerful choices. It shows that we are confident enough not to need to prove ourselves with loud words. Ultimately, strength doesn't lie in speaking louder or arguing more sharply. Strength lies in the ability to control oneself amidst conflict. When we understand that not every argument needs to be won, we become calmer. We are no longer caught in the cycle of winning and losing. We choose peace over aggression. And that peace is the greatest victory of all. True strength of character doesn't lie in dominating others. It lies in the ability to control oneself in the most difficult moments. Many mistakenly believe that being strong means winning every confrontation, silencing others with your arguments, and always being in a superior position. But that's just an expression of ego. True strength of character is much deeper. It's inner strength, the ability to maintain composure and personal values when storms strike. In life, difficult moments often appear unexpectedly. These could be misunderstandings, unappreciated efforts, repeated failures, or facing criticism. It is during these times that people reveal their true nature. Those lacking resilience tend to react with anger, blame, or attempts to overpower others to protect their ego. Those with resilience choose to confront and control their emotions. Dominating others sometimes brings a feeling of immediate victory. When we speak louder, argue more sharply, or hold a higher position of power, we can make the other party back down. But such victories often leave a gap, can hurt the other person's self-esteem, and damage relationships. True strength of character doesn't need to be proven by winning or losing. Mastering oneself requires self-awareness. When emotions run high, we need to recognize them instead of letting them guide our actions. For example, when criticized in front of a group, feelings of shame and anger can arise simultaneously. If we react immediately, we are likely to say things without control. But if we stop, breathe, and listen fully, we have the opportunity to understand the issue clearly and respond thoughtfully. Difficulties come not only from the outside, but also from within. There are times when we have to confront self-doubt. There are sleepless nights filled with anxiety about the future. In those moments, strength isn't about hiding emotions or pretending to be strong in front of others. Strength is about acknowledging fear, but not letting it control our decisions. People with strong character understand that emotions are just a part of the experience. They don't deny sadness or disappointment, but they also don't let them linger. They seek to learn from mistakes instead of wallowing in self-blame. Their inner stability helps them stay grounded even when circumstances change. In a competitive environment, many people try to assert themselves by belittling others. They believe they must stand out at all costs. But lasting value doesn't come from dominance. It comes from consistency between words and actions. From the ability to keep one's word, and from respecting those around them. People of true character don't need to show off. They let their results and character speak for themselves. When faced with conflict, self-control is crucial. Instead of reacting instinctively, a person with self-control asks what is most important at the moment. They consider the long-term consequences instead of just satisfying immediate emotions. This maturity makes a significant difference. In a family, strength of character is demonstrated through how we handle conflict. When disagreements arise, we might choose to impose our own opinions. But if done frequently, this will weaken the bond. Conversely, when we know how to listen and regulate our emotions, the family atmosphere becomes safer and more respectful. Mastering ourselves helps us become a source of support instead of a source of tension. In the workplace, composure is demonstrated through the ability to remain calm under pressure. When a project encounters problems, when clients complain, or when deadlines approach, anxiety can easily spread. A person with composure doesn't panic. They focus on solutions. This calmness builds trust among colleagues and helps the team overcome challenges. Self-mastery also includes controlling one's words. An unthoughtful remark can cause deep hurt. People with self-control understand the weight of words. They consider their words carefully before speaking, especially in sensitive situations. Caution doesn't weaken them, it makes them more trustworthy. Integrity also lies in the ability to remain steadfast in one's personal values when faced with temptation. There are times when one could achieve quick gains by compromising on principles, but a person of integrity chooses the more difficult path if it is the right one. They accept short-term losses to preserve long-term integrity. The most difficult moments are often the real test. When betrayed, when lost, when plans fall apart, negative emotions can overwhelm you. Mastering yourself in such times is not easy, but it is inner resilience that prevents you from collapsing. You may hurt, but you don't let that pain turn into lasting resentment. Developing resilience is a continuous process. No one is born perfect at controlling their emotions. We learn through experience, through setbacks. Each time we choose calmness over impulsiveness. Each time we choose to listen over imposing our will, we strengthen our inner resolve. What's valuable is that when we master ourselves, we not only change ourselves, but also positively influence others. In a group, someone who remains calm amidst stress can help the entire group regain balance. Therefore, composure is not only personal, but also has community value. Ultimately, dominating others may bring temporary recognition, but mastering oneself brings lasting respect. When we are not swept away by negative emotions, when we maintain our integrity in the face of challenges, we build a solid foundation for life. True character is a silent but enduring strength. It is not noisy or ostentatious, but strong enough to help us stand firm against all changes. And it is in the most difficult moments that this character shines brightest. Anger is instinctive, but mastering it is a sign of maturity. We've all experienced moments of intense emotional outbursts. Sometimes, just an unintentional word, an unfriendly glance, or an unexpected situation can cause our mood to fluctuate. That's perfectly natural. But what differentiates impulsiveness from self-control is how we choose to react. Every time we get angry, we stand at a crossroads. One path leads to an immediate reaction, where words and actions are dictated by emotion. The other requires a brief pause, a deep breath, a moment to question whether this reaction is truly necessary. That small pause, though fleeting, can completely alter the outcome. Mastering anger doesn't mean suppressing or pretending to be emotionless. It's about recognizing your emotions and choosing how to express them appropriately. When you understand why you're angry, it's easier to find solutions than to vent your frustration on others. When you're calm, you can say what you think without causing hurt. In a family, a pause can preserve warmth. In the workplace, a moment of calm can save a successful partnership. In everyday life, composure helps us avoid decisions we'll regret. Many times, a moment of lack of self-control can cost us what we've built over many years. Maturity isn't about the absence of anger. Maturity is knowing when to speak, when to remain silent, when to advance, and when to retreat. It's a process of daily practice. Perhaps today we still react impulsively. But if each day we strive to be a little better, pause a little longer, listen a little more deeply, we are getting closer to self-mastery. Happiness and success don't just come from talent or opportunity. They also come from the ability to maintain inner peace amidst turmoil. When anger doesn't control us, we maintain clarity of mind. When clarity of mind is maintained, we make better decisions. And when those right decisions are repeated enough times, life gradually changes for the better. Starting today, try pausing for a moment before reacting. Give yourself a chance to think before you speak, to breathe before you act. Big changes always begin with small things like this. If you believe that controlling your emotions is the key to happiness and success, please share this video and leave your thoughts. Perhaps your story will help someone learn how to stay calmer in their next difficult moment.